Okay, so we are live. Hello, Karen. How are you? Hope everything's okay with everybody this week. It's Friday night, 11:38, 11/3/2023, and we're going to be going over the latest from what's been going on this week in the headlines. So I'll play my intro, and I will be right back. Okay, so I am well, Karen. I hope everybody's doing good. I'm sitting here basking in the tropics, which is not real. It's just a backdrop. I'm not really sitting in the water here. It's just a backdrop here. Um, so I figure we're gonna go over some of the Delphi shit first, because that seems to be um, the prevailing wind here. But I wanted to start off with this. Hold on a second here, because it's pretty fitting. It's, so let's. I think I get to play. Hey, Lynn, how are you? Let's play this here. Hold on a second. I want to play this first. Um, I think I have 30 seconds of this. So let's do this first. Okay, so uh, I think that's fitting uh, for what we're going to discuss tonight, which is the Delphi thing. Um, that is my tribute to who I've dubbed King Gull, King Seagull, the judge for the Delphi case. So she has become king of this case, and we'll go over some of this stuff here. So I'm going to go back to this one here because this was 3 days ago. But if anybody doesn't know about this case, it's just been a debacle from day one, and it continues to do that. So this is the story about Abby and Libby, who were hitchhiking, not hitchhiking, hiking a trail in Delphi, Indiana, on the Mona High Bridge, and the next day they were found unalived. And 6.5 years later, 7 years later, we're no closer to any resolve than we were 6.5 years ago. So let's go here. I'm going to play this here. The latest is basically King Gull has fired the lawyers somehow. She's basically said they can no longer be on the case. So Richard Allen now has some new attorneys, but I don't necessarily think we've heard the end of them. So let's go here. Give me a second. So this was done 3 days ago on Court TV. And I'll stream this. I think the problem now is she's actually drank the Kool-Aid too in this case. It happens to everybody. You know, you kind of get sucked into this case and you just end up in a web of like a circus, and she's part of it now too. So this is coming from Court TV. Obviously, Richard Allen's case is being delayed till who knows when. We'll play this and then I'll go over more of it.
News coming out of Delphi, Indiana. Of course, we're talking about the case against defendant Richard Allen, accused of the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. We just hit the 1 year anniversary of the date of his charging announcement. And today, his new lawyers were going before the judge, but not without some big drama. I want to bring in the guy in.
Yeah, I've dubbed her, she's now King Gull, Gull. I think that's how you spell her name. And if you put the whole thing together, it's King Seagull. But she's not having any of this stuff. She's gonna reign over this whole thing until it's completely done, literally.
In the know about all of this, Court TV's crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. What in the world is going on here?
Another bombshell. And we talked about this on opening statements today, that the attorneys that were removed or withdrew from the case and then said that they wanted to stay on, well, now they were denied the ability to.
Hello, Lynn. Hello, Karen. Hello, Dandy. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's well.
To still represent him pro bono. This is the arrival of the suspect accused of killing Libby German and Abby Williams back in February of 2007.
Is it a full moon tonight? Because the cats are going absolutely freaking berserko in this house.
Making his way into Carroll County Courthouse today. Remember, we didn't even get a chance to see him a week and a half ago when there was that emergency hearing after the leak of documents and those crime scene photos. That led to the judge holding that hearing and saying that she wanted them to appear before her, and then they withdrew.
Right.
Well, now the new attorneys have also filed for a motion to move the trial date from January, and they will now have the set trial date in October. But going back next year,
man.
This is a part of the document that was filed today for the pro bono.
Yeah.
I think this was done 3 days ago. Yeah, this was a few days ago, and he basically, they're both gone. Both of them are gone, but not forgotten.
This is filed by Andrew Baldwin, and it was also filed by Brad Rosie. And
the original attorneys.
The original attorneys.
To rep him pro bono, free of charge.
Free of charge.
Wow.
And Allen himself asked for this to happen. So in part it reads, Andrew Baldwin, also Rosie, enters his appearance as Mr. Allen's privately contracted lawyer. Attorney Baldwin acknowledges his prior representation of Mr. Allen, his contracted public defender, and reaffirms that he, Attorney Baldwin, did not and has not voluntarily withdrawn from Mr. Allen's case in the said capacity. The filing of this appearance is intended to convert Attorney.
That's what these cats do, right? It's everybody else is sleeping in the house. So now the male cats are like, it's their time. They're just running around this house. The dogs are sleeping, but this is when they start to act up. So if you hear hissing and meowing and things running around the house, that's the two cats. And the female cats are all gone. They're sleeping. So we have 6 cats. So.
Baldwin's status and Mr. Allen's public defender to Mr. Allen's private counsel, wherein Attorney Baldwin will move forward with said representation on a pro bono basis in the event that he is not reinstated as Mr. Allen's public defender.
Whoa.
This denied by the judge today. Fran Gold.
What?
Yes.
Okay, wait. So two major things
Yes.
have happened here. So the original attorneys who the judge said withdrew came in today on the date where the new attorneys were coming in to
Right.
pick the new trial date. And they said, we're going to be really clever here and file pro bono appearances so that we're repping him for free. And then the judge says, oh no, I'm denying those two appearances for you original attorneys who have withdrawn.
She
That-
denied their request according to script.
I've literally went to basically websites and trying to find if this has ever happened before, like in a court or a trial, and I haven't found anything where a judge has removed, what did she say, gross negligence, I think. I don't think I've ever heard of that before, but it's Indiana. Anything can happen there. She's literally taken over. That's why I call her King Gull. She's ruling over this now, almost like a puppet court.
Scripps News Indiana, citing gross negligence for her reasoning.
Wow. And that was what they wrote in their motions, pertaining to the withdrawal. Within the flurry of motions, she was saying, strike from the record. They were
You have 4 parrots? 4 parrots, that's a lot of parrots.
saying essentially she was going to admonish them and say they were grossly negligent in representing Richard Allen when the leak happened, or they could withdraw privately and maintain their dignity, right?
Exactly. And then now they have said, we never wanted to withdraw from representation to begin with. And they were filing motions saying that they want the Supreme Court in Indiana to intervene and remove the judge. And they want to
Right.
stay on the case.
Right. And so that's going nowhere because the judge is still saying, off the case, off the case. So the judge is being consistent saying, you're off the case, you're off the case, you're off the case. Did not allow cameras in today when she did before, Matt Johnson. So we couldn't see what
Who's Mitch?
happened here. But we had wondered when you and I talked this morning on opening statements, was it going to be all 4 attorneys
Which it was.
battling? Right.
And the new attorneys, Robert Schremen and William Librato,
Yes.
they are in Allen County. This judge is in Allen County. Remember, she was appointed to the case after a judge in Carroll County, which is the Delphi area,
Yes.
withdrew.
Yes.
So she was appointed. And that's the reason why for that emergency motion and that hearing a week and a half ago that we were in her courthouse.
This is something else. Matt, this really helps to get the lay of the land. So she's familiar with those 2 new attorneys that she
is.
appointed. And so the ones who were previously court appointed offering to still work for
You are too funny, Danny. That is classic. Yeah, this is what happens. They appoint these judges and it goes to their head. And like I said, this case here, it can't get any more bizarre than this.
free and represent Richard Allen, and he wants them. The judge is saying
God,
no.
fund me.
So the big question now is, now that we have a trial date for next October, once again, a year from now,
Right.
and the trial dates fall within Halloween. We have Halloween, 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 which is just weird in the case
Yes.
by itself, because
Yes.
remember that that announcement of his arrest was 1 year ago today. But now the question is going to be, since everyone is located legally in Allen County, will it change from a change of veneer to a change of venue?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to see. That may be the next motion filed.
So this case now, in my opinion, is going into the appeal phase, right? Like, I've been following this case since day one. Like I have been following the case since day one, but I had heard about it, on the national news and back in 2017. And my first thought was, well, this should be fairly easy to solve. I mean, this was done in broad daylight and on a nice day, two kids out walking. And I mean, they should have this case wrapped up in 48 hours, Mitch, GoFundMe from Rob, $500. I haven't heard about that. I have heard about other stuff though. So, the first year anniversary on the bridge, when they did that interview with Doug Carter on the freezing on the bridge, and I knew at that point that they were clueless. They had no idea who did this. It was the most defeating press conference on the bridge I've ever heard in my life. Like they had no idea who did this, and they had video, they had audio, they had everything they needed. But so here we are. It's 6.5 years later, almost 7 years, and we're nowhere near the resolution in this case. Nowhere near. And it's going to go to an appeal. So this will be the longest trial ever in history. If they get a conviction, right? So they're going to go to trial tentatively next October. And if it even gets to that point, I just don't know how you're going to find 12 jurors that all agree that this guy's guilty. I don't see that. I don't see any way that's going to happen. You can go out and do a random survey of 12 people who have never heard of this case, give them the evidence that they have against Richard Allen and the PCA. And I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people will probably say, yeah, he's probably pretty guilty, but that's about it. You're not going to get 12 people that are going to say he's guilty, especially with all the other stuff. I mean, you literally have transcripts from a guy who law enforcement basically said, we don't think you did it, but we think somebody who's involved. I mean, the whole Keegan Klein transcripts, and the prosecutor came out at the PCA press conference and said, we think there's other people involved. So, I mean, where are these other people? And it just based on the evidence that they have in the PCA, it's not to mention this. I mean, they just leaked crime scene photos. If I was Richard Allen right now, I'd say, look, this is a mistrial. It's just bizarre. I don't know who leaked the crime scene photos. I know that a few. Hey, Miracle Hearts, how are you? Yeah, that's what I mean. It's 50-50. Like even the YouTubers and people who think this guy's guilty, most of them are saying, well, there's got to be other people involved. So, where are these other people? I don't know. But this even if they can convict this guy, it's got appeal written all over it. This is straight out of the loony bin right here. This whole so we're gonna go here now.
Breaking news right now at noon.
So this was done 3 days ago too. I think this is I got it up there already. Okay. I hope you're all doing well, Miracle Hearts. It's always good to have you guys in here. Where the hell am I? Right here. Okay.
Major new developments in the Delphi murders case as a judge decides who will represent defendant Richard Allen. This is new video of Allen being taken.
And the problem is that you're probably going to hear a lot of people say this, but it's true. The real issue here is the victims, right? Like they are not going to get any justice for a long time. I mean, that's the problem. If this case goes to appeals and gets into the appeals courts, and they may never have any answers at all. I mean, myself personally, I think Richard Allen is guilty. I mean, it's just me, but my opinion means absolutely nothing. It's going to come down to 12 people. For one, I don't think they have enough evidence. I know they don't have any DNA. I just know that. This has never been a DNA case. If they would have had DNA, they would have found this guy a long time ago because they would have probably done some sort of a DNA pooling around the neighborhood. They don't have any electronic evidence, nothing that I'm aware of. All they have is a bullet, and if they didn't handle that properly at the crime scene, then they don't have that. Then they have eyewitness testimony, and I still want to know who the curly-haired guy is on the bridge, because that's who Betsy Blair saw. She didn't see Richard Allen. She went double down on it, and you have a witness that saw some guy muddy in a tan jacket. So who that is, I don't know. Myself personally, I mean, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, "Who do you think's guilty?" I think it's Richard Allen, but can I prove that? Absolutely not. And there's other suspects. There's Ron Logan. There's Keegan Klein. There's when Daniel Nations came out, I thought Daniel Nations was the guy. But I've been pretty solid on this. I think this was a lone wolf guy. I don't think it's very complicated. People have made it complicated, but what the hell do I know?
Into the Carroll County Courthouse this morning. That hearing just ended a little while ago in Delphi. Our senior investigative reporter, Bob Siegel, was in the courtroom as that hearing happened. He joins us now from Delphi. Bob, tell us what happened in today's hearing.
Well, the judge in the Delphi murders case has disqualified Richard Allen's original defense team. That announcement came just a short while ago in a tense hearing that happened here at the Carroll County Courthouse. Let me kind of explain how things played out here this morning. So this morning, I
don't think Richard Allen had any hair. That's the thing. And I know he didn't have curly hair. I mean, Betsy Blair is the one that saw him on the bridge. Betsy Blair is the one that came out with the younger guy sketch. That was the first sketch they had. And they decided not to go with that sketch because the older guy sketch was front and center. They wanted to go with that one because that was the one they took from, I think it was the one they took from basically images of the video they had and the still imagery of him. And I think one of the girls of the three is the older guy sketch. Now they went with that one for 2 years, and then Betsy Blair basically said, "That's not the guy who I saw. The younger guy sketch is," I'll pull that up. Give me a second, I'll pull that up.
had the two original defense attorneys, Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin. They walked into the courtroom. They took a position right at the defense table, and they were prepared to defend Richard Allen this morning. But soon after, once the hearing began, when Judge Frances Gall, when she took the bench, she was clearly annoyed to see Rosie and Baldwin sitting at the defense table. She claimed they had withdrawn as Richard Allen's attorneys before a court hearing 12 days ago. So she asked the defense team, what changed in the last 12 days? The attorneys told the judge they felt she improperly forced them to withdraw against their will. Rosie said they're willing to stay on as Richard Allen's attorneys free of charge, but the judge quickly rejected that offer. She said she believed the two attorneys engaged in gross negligence, and at that point she spoke directly to Richard Allen, who has asked for Rosie and Baldwin to continue representing him. The judge told Allen, while he is entitled,
it depends who you ask, right? It depends who you ask. You can ask, I think that's where this whole thing came from, where you ask a younger person if somebody looks, and they're going to say, yeah, he looks pretty old, because everybody kind of looks old when you're younger. And when you're older, everybody kind of looks a little younger. Yeah, absolutely. They only have to, they charge him with murder. I think it was murder 1, count 2. So they only have to prove the abduction. But I don't think they can do that either, because I don't care who you are. I don't think anybody can make out who that guy on the bridge is. I just don't. Facially, he looks like a lot of people. But the problem I have with Betsy Blair's statement is this guy's 5'4", right? He's not very tall. He's considered to be, I mean, just look at this guy, right? I mean, if you see this guy, that's the first thing that I'm going to remember is this, when they ask me who I saw, right? I'm gonna say, yeah, this guy was a shrimp. You know what I mean? He wasn't taller than 5'5". You know, it's not like you can mistake this guy for being 5'9". You just can't. So, and maybe she did say that. I just don't know. I mean, uh maybe he's 5'6" with shoes on, but still, that would have been one of the things that I would have definitely remembered. But
entitled to a vigorous defense. She said, I cannot allow these attorneys to represent you. I cannot do it, sir.
who the hell is she to say this? It's just, my God.
I just can't. I am sorry this happened to you. So that means now
He's laughing his ass off now because he knows this is going to an appeal. This is going to be an appellate court thing.
for now, there's going to be a new set of public defenders for Richard Allen. 2 attorneys from Fort Wayne are going to be defending him, and we should.
Abby was 5'4", and that's how I knew. I myself knew from the beginning this guy. I knew this guy was from Indiana. You can tell by the accent. Definitely a Hoosier accent. The other thing was he had to be a local. You just don't find that bridge, that area. It's just, and I never thought the guy was taller than 5'9", because what I did was I looked at Abby's image on the bridge, and Abby is 5'4". She had her hair up, so she's probably about 5'8". And if you match that image that Libby took of Abby on the bridge next to whoever that guy is on the bridge, he isn't any taller than her. He's just not. At the most 5'9". That's what I said. He was 5'9" is shorter.
Point out the other big storyline that came out here this morning. There is a new trial date that has been set. Instead of a trial taking place in January, it's now been pushed back for 10 months, and it is set to begin November 15th of 2024. October 15th of 2024. Now, we have clear indications that Richard Allen's original defense team, they are not going to step down here willingly.
Hello, Lone Pony. How are you? Good to see you here. Hey, buddy. It's Steve. Steve is in the chat. Look at this. Hey, buddy. How are you? Steve is great. Go check out his site, True Crime Web. Him and Mrs. Steve are probably the greatest people on the planet. They're very, very good people. I would recommend to stop hanging around Ruckus, that's for sure.
And that they are going to continue to fight. At one point, we saw Andrew Baldwin, one of the original defense attorneys, as he was walking out of the courtroom, he stopped to speak with Kathy Allen, Richard Allen's wife, and he said, it ain't over. The whole world's watching. They see what's happening. There are indications that this is going to be appealed legally, perhaps to the Indiana Court of Appeals, even the Supreme Court. So we will keep an eye out for that in the next few days. But as far as right now, we can tell you Richard Allen has a new defense team. They will start getting the evidence later this week to begin their defense as they try to prepare for a trial that is now set to begin next October. Matt?
Yeah, Bob, lots.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on that. That's
of new developments. And before we let you go, did we get a chance to see Richard Allen in the courtroom today?
We did. And we should point out that he looked much more alert.
Steve's the guy, right? Steve from True Crime Web is the guy that if you go to a Waffle House with him, right, you're covered. You're good. Just sit back and enjoy all of the drama, chair throwing.
Than the last few times that we have seen him in court. He came in, he was in shackles. He actually had to.
If people have never been to a Waffle House, I highly recommend it. It's almost like an American Icon story. Like you go there, especially at night. I mean, if you go during the day, it's not the same. You got to go there at night, especially once all the drunks get let out. I mean, it's better than a boxing match. It just is.
To climb 3 flights of stairs because the elevator here at the courthouse is broken. It took him a while to do that. When he was in the courtroom, as he was leaving, he spoke briefly to his wife and his mother. He said, "I love you guys." So we did get a chance to see him. We also saw family for the victims, and they were in court today. We'll certainly have much more on what played out in court and the reactions to that coming up at 4, at 5, and at 6.
I mean, bring your own coffee, right? You just got to bring your own coffee because the coffee is just absolutely horrible. But it's not about the coffee; it's about the experience, pretty much. All right, so I was going to do this here. I appreciate everybody coming in. It's my time of night. It's 12 o'clock. This is when I'm up. Okay, so going back to the sketches here, this guy here was the first guy. This was the first sketch. I believe this sketch here was done by Betsy Blair. She's witness 4. And my opinion, I think Betsy Blair herself, witness 4, might have been either the actual target of this or if she crosses the bridge, she's probably the victim. But anyways, this here is the first sketch, and they held this one here. They held up on this one. This guy here to the right, this is the first sketch that they released. And in my opinion, this guy looks nothing like this guy. It's just, but some people will see different things in these, but I think this guy here, the hat, I mean, this guy's nose is completely different than this here. But this sketch here was released first, and I believe they took this image was taken from images that they got from this guy's face here, I think. And I think one of the girls, one of the 3 girls that was walking towards the Freedom Bridge saw somebody that looked similar to this guy. So I think that's where those sketches came from. But so what I want to know is who this guy is. Hey, CJK, how are you? Yeah, I think if the timeline is true, right? If the timeline adds up, you got Abby and Libby were dropped off about 149, 148-ish, somewhere around there, and you have witness 4. Betsy Blair's already ahead of them, right? So she's walking towards the bridge. She sees the guy on the bridge. There's very little. I mean, if those timelines are accurate, there's very little room for error there. There's about 3 or 4 minutes, because Libby took an image of. Let me pull that up. She took an image of the entire bridge. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. She took three images. She took one of the entire bridge. That was the first image she took, and I think that was at. I mean, some people say 2:07, but I think it was probably earlier than that. Let's see here. I think it's this one here. So this is the first image she took. She took an image of the entire bridge. This is facing south, I think. So if you look here, there's absolutely, I've blown this up. I've tried to look down here at this other end. If you blow it up, you can really see pretty good. There's nobody down there. There's absolutely nobody down there. And it takes approximately 3 to 6 minutes to cross this bridge, depending on who you are. So the timeline is very, very tight, right? If she takes this image at like 2 o'clock, 2:01, and Betsy Blair sees Rich and Allen here on the first platform over here. I think that's it there. it's a timeline thing. And then this is the second image. So this is facing north. So there's nobody here. So, yeah, it's pretty close. Why are the two pictures so different? Which pictures, Lynn? Yeah, I mean, I can see some similarities, but you know what throws me off is the curly hair. I mean, I don't think Richard Allen's had curly hair his whole life, but that's just me. I don't think they look anything alike. Just don't. But that's my opinion, and that's what's going to happen in court. You know, people are going to say one thing and then move on to another thing. They're going to try. The defense is definitely going to try to really hammer away at the witnesses. But I had another one too that I wanted to play. Give me a second here. Give me 2 seconds while I search for this here. And I might move on because I don't want to be talking Delphi all night, that's for sure. Because there's other shit going on. We have the Koberger thing. I'll tell you who I watched the other day is Christina Randall. I don't know if anybody's seen her, but she's really good. Okay, so this is the one I wanted to watch here. Okay, so yep, this is the guy, Vinny. Makes you wonder. Yeah, I think the wife knew only because I mean if everything's true and he told authorities he was out there, he probably told her that too. He probably told her that he went to the authorities and told them that he was there, and they didn't do anything about it. So she probably thought, hey, yeah, he said he was there. So, but you never know. Yeah, I mean, if she doubled down on that too. She's the one that came forward before the press conference, and you know the famous press conference in 2019, and said, you guys have the wrong image. That's not who I saw on the bridge. So that's bizarre. You know, that's who did she see? You know, I mean, I think two things. I think the younger guy sketch looks a little like Garrett Kurtz. And two, I mean, if the timeline is right, then that can't be. I mean, like I said, if I see someone 5'4", right, you just don't see. I mean, you could go walking around all day long and not see a guy 5'4", right? I think the average height for a guy is like 5'9", maybe 5'10", maybe 5'8", lowest. But if you see somebody standing on the bridge, on a trail you've probably been to 100,000 times in your life, right? And you see somebody 5'4" standing there, that's probably going to be something that you remember, because I think Betsy Blair was pretty much scared out of her mind when she saw that guy standing there. That's why she turned around and took off. So, I mean, that would have been one thing that really stuck out to me. And yeah, she's good. I've watched her today. I've seen her a couple times now, but she's really good. I like her. True Crime Web, though, is if you guys really want to watch. I mean, Steve is great. Steve, I can't say I've been kind of not missing his lives here lately because I've been trying to do other shit and get. The think tank is great too. Frankie's great, so I've been trying to get her going here, getting her subscribers and. But Steve is a genuine cop, retired cop. His wife is just fantastic. They're all great. So. She roots for the wrong college football team. That's the only problem. We'll get her to the Alabama side soon here. Look at this, guys. Frosty's in the chat. Frosty is in the chat. Pay close attention to Frosty in the chat because he'll just disappear. What's going on, buddy? Good night, Dandy. Frosty is awesome too. Thomas Frost. Yeah, could be. Could be. There's a lot of things that could be. It's one of those things that, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that it was such a nice day out there, I'd say maybe. And maybe she was standing at a point where she didn't notice the height thing, but hey, Miss Persevere, how are you? I just think it's one of those things that would stand out in my mind, and I like 5'4" is really short. Like 5'4" for a guy, that's, like I said, that's he might have had a hat on. Who knows? He might have appeared taller. He might have appeared more bulky. I don't know if that does it sometimes. But I just think that would have been the one thing out of my mouth is, boy, that guy was really short. I know that. And who knows? Maybe she did say that. I don't know. And then the curly hair thing throws me off too. But there's no doubt in my mind this thing's going to be appealed. There's just no. I mean, like I was kind of 60% before all of this stuff happened about an appeal, but now I'm closer to almost 80%. And I personally think Richard Allen's guilty. I mean, I've always thought that in this case. It was a lone wolf. Some guy was out there with a twisted, sick mind. And whoever is responsible for this deserves a couple of baseball bats to the face. I mean, this is just, you can't have people like this out in public. It's just not. Hey, Miranda, how are you? Hey, Frosty, what's up, man? Yeah, the guy, I always knew, like, from the beginning, from the still image, I could tell this guy wasn't over 5'9". I could tell that. Just whoever says 6 foot, if there was a guy out there that was 6 feet tall, he would have looked like a monster from 60 feet. I mean, and that's the reason why I ruled Tony Klein out. Tony Klein is 6. He's got to be 6'1". And I think everybody except for a few people ruled out Keegan Klein being out there. I mean, Keegan Klein would have looked like a basketball out there. So you just can't make this stuff up. first you had the red Jeep with the clowns jumping out and all of this stuff. People bid on that. Now this whole, this old Mystic thing goes back to year one. I remember people talking about this back in year one. I mean, Robert Ives even came out and said this scene was bizarre. I mean, that's basically what he said. That's the thing. Like, you have nobody there at 2:00, right? Except for 4 people. After 3:00, it's like everybody shows up. You had flannel shirt guy show up. You have everybody shows up afterwards. It's just you can't. It's bizarre. What sick person would do this? I mean, that's the problem I have with this whole thing. What sick, twisted individual would leak these photos? By accident or not? I mean, it's just, of all the things you don't leak, that's like the one thing, right? I mean, I don't honestly care who did it. It's just, it's sick. It's twisted to do that. These poor kids, that's. Hey, necessarily, well, how are you? What's going on, buddy? I mean, am I playing this? No, I'm not. Hold on a second. I do this all the time. I guarantee you I mute my mic too at some point.
Allen's now former attorneys Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie were
Look at these guys. They look like shysters, don't they?
in court, despite their previous withdrawal from the case earlier this month. Judge Fran Gohl has now formally disqualified them from the case after Rosie and Baldwin filed to represent Allen pro bono following the withdrawal. Judge Gohl denied that request, citing gross negligence. Baldwin wasn't happy about that after court and spoke to reporters briefly after the hearing about the judge's ruling. Baldwin, can you provide any comment?
Journalism. It's time for you guys to start being journalists.
Gohl apologized.
What? Why would you say that? Like,
to Allen for denying his request to keep Baldwin and Rosie, saying,
I mean, look at how short this guy is. I know he's on a different step right now than these other 2 guys, but he's just tiny guy. You would probably notice this.
she cannot and will not allow them to represent him. She then officially appointed his new defense attorneys, Robert Scrimmin and William Labrado. Allen's new defense team requested that trial date that is originally set for January to be pushed back. The state and Judge Fran Gohl agreed, saying they likely wouldn't be ready for that trial in January. That new trial date is set for October 15th. It comes nearly 8 years after Abby and Libby were found dead. In Delphi, Caitlin Kendall, WRTV.
All right, we also have the letter. Now, this is the letter. To me, this is very significant from October 11th. Richard Allen to the judge. Please accept.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ron Logan's a bridge guy either. But I respect people's opinion. I mean, nobody can tell who that is on the bridge. I don't care. I mean, people have been trying to do that for 6 years. I mean, people have gone to great lengths to try to figure out facial features on this guy, to really elaborate websites to get, pixels straightened out and all of that stuff. You just can't. You can't. Every time you look at that face, it changes, especially in the 1.5 seconds of video. I mean, it's hard to, and that's why I think they can't just say, well, we know that this guy here, Richard Allen, kidnapped them, because you can't tell that that's Richard Allen. You just can't. I mean, you can tell more now that he's been arrested, that he kind of looks like the guy, but.
Accept this letter as confirmation that I've communicated with my attorney, Bradley Rosie, regarding the circumstances regarding the leaking of sensitive information in this case. I am aware that images of crime scene photos and other related documents were taken.
The one thing about Ron Logan I can't get past is, we all know he was home. He was home there on the day until about 4:30 or so, because that's when he went. That's when he supposedly went to the fish store, but he was home on his property at about 2 o'clock. We know that. And, I know people don't do a lot by cell phone pings and stuff like that, but if he was in his house, if he was in his house, he probably would have been connected to his Wi-Fi. So he wasn't in his house, because they had a ping of him outside the house. So, and I just can't get past that. I can't, I mean, I've lived in the woods too, in the country. And if I hear something on the property, I'm going to notice it. And I think that's what happened. I think he must have heard something out there that day and probably didn't think anything of it until, people came knocking at his door saying, we're looking for 2 missing girls. That's when maybe he said to himself, I better go out and check what I heard. Not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that I can't get past that.
By a friend and former employee of Attorney Baldwin at Attorney Baldwin's office. I have discussed with Attorney Rosie the potential impact that the distribution of these documents could have on my defense. Attorney Rosie has also communicated to me that the prosecutor has requested that my attorneys be disqualified from representing me in this case. I do not want this to happen. I want Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Rosie to continue to represent me until the case is resolved, one way or the other. I believe they are acting in a manner that is in my best interest. I appreciate your time and consideration in this matter.
I think that law enforcement may have a way of, they might not have known before, with the clearer video, with the clearer image. Who said that? Was that CJK that said that? Right here. Does anyone believe law enforcement has a clearer video? They might now, right? Like, they may be able to match up Richard Allen's facial features with the image now, since they have a suspect, right? They might be able to do that. Who knows what they can do, but we don't know. I'm so tired of them. I just am. I just tired of them. I don't like to say anything about a lot of people, but these people here have been leaked stuff. And we know that because they were all giggling and laughing about knowing about the confessions before anybody else did. So who told them that? They knew that Richard Allen was going to get arrested before anybody else did. So they know more before anybody else did. So prosecution leaked stuff too. It's obvious.
So the attorneys want in. They'll do it for free because he doesn't have any money. He wants the attorneys in, but the judge has disqualified them and the prosecutor doesn't want them in. What's going on? Let's bring in our guests joining us in Indianapolis, Indiana, hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee.
I mean, if I was the new defense team and I was going about this case, I would definitely go at the Keegan Klein angle, because you literally have transcripts of law enforcement saying, you know, we don't think you did it, but we think you know who did it. They have law enforcement 2 hour asking Keegan Klein questions about the crime scene. Why did you look up DNA? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I mean, anybody, the guy just got 40 years. I mean, the most anybody's ever gotten in Indiana for that crime. And he deserves to be where he deserves to be, because he's a piece of junk. I hate the guy. I can't stand him. But that's the angle that if I was defense attorneys, that's the angle I would go.
Are with us, and those of you should know Kevin is an attorney as well. This is very messy, but I'm just gonna take a breath. You guys are in court today. Where are we? Because Andrew Baldwin, after court, looked like he was angry.
Yes, indeed. Yes. A lot of high emotions, I think, at the courthouse today. And I mean, where are we? We're in the middle of a big mess, Vinny. I think there's no other way to state it. You have just an absolute kind of, I think, unrolling disaster in this case right now with the kind of fallout from this leak and what's happened since. And I think it's undermined a lot of public confidence in the court and in what's happening here in Indiana today.
And I think it's worth noting that what happened today was not just the result of the leak of the crime scene photos. At one point, Judge Gull asked
Steve, if anybody took my computer right now, I'd be going to jail. I've looked up everything from, and I'm pretty sure your whole backyard, my God. But I've looked up shit. Why are you looking this stuff up? And that's what I mean. They just, they have all of that stuff. And I guarantee you ask 80% of the people who have been involved in this Delphi case more than a year or two, they're all going to say they still think Keegan Klein's involved somehow. Personally, I don't think he's involved at all, but that's just me.
Prosecutor McClelland, what do you think about all of this? And he started citing several things that the defense attorneys had done, which in his mind constituted gross negligence. He referred to an earlier leak that took place in December of 2022. He referred to the fact that in his judgment, these defense attorneys had prepared filings which included erroneous statements or lies. He referred to that Frank's memorandum, which he says was all about arguing theory instead of stating the facts of the case, which would lead to.
Hey, Kels, how are you? Good to see you, buddy. I've already been here 58 minutes. Oh my God.
Help Judge Gold determine whether or not to hold a Frank's hearing.
Now, I want to get back to the crime scene photos, right? We talked about this leak. You guys at the Murder Sheet podcast received this leak. You deleted it. You notified law enforcement. You have never even described publicly what you've seen. So has anyone else who got these leaks, have they put the images out there? Have they described them anywhere? So I know you guys didn't. You were one of the people that received this stuff and you got rid of it.
Unfortunately, there have been some disclosures in different.
There's been rumors though that there's been rumors I've heard. I don't know how, rumors in this case are like worth nothing, but I've heard and I've been told that these crime scene photos have been out for over 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's just nothing. This is nothing new.
Social media, sort of spaces about details that we feel are just unnecessary and just sort of gratuitous. And as far as we know, no images or none of the really graphic images have gotten out there. So that's good so far. And we just hope it stays that way because defendant Allen's rights need to be protected. And these girls' families don't need to go through this. I mean, they've been through so much already.
And in today's hearing, was Richard Allen there? Did he speak? Did he say anything about wanting Baldwin and Rosie back?
It's interesting. Judge Gull addressed him directly at one point. He didn't really speak. I didn't hear him voice anything, but she essentially said, listen, I know that you want these attorneys to stay on, but I'm sorry, I cannot in good conscience allow them. She basically indicated that they were inadequate and
all I want to see is the transcripts. That's all I care about. You know, I mean, the transcripts should be public, in my opinion. What happened in chambers should be public. That has nothing to do with the gag order, in my opinion. It has nothing to do with. They should be public. I mean, that's been the problem with this whole case, in my opinion, since day one, is the transparency. And I understand that they can't tell you everything, and they're not going to tell you anything. It's nobody needs to know anything. That's why they keep these things secret. But stuff like this here, what happened in the chamber, that should be made public. They should. I mean, if there's nothing to hide, then share it. This courtroom, though, is absolutely amazing. Look at this stuff here.
Had been compromised by their own actions and that they would not be competent going forward. And so one thing that's interesting, though, is Richard Allen seemed a lot different than the Richard Allen we've been seeing in previous hearings. He seemed healthier today. He seems to have gained a bit of weight. He's not looking as emaciated and pallid as he once was. So we were sort of seeing a different Richard Allen today.
And the new attorneys, do we have any indication?
Both True Crime Web and Mob Crew, awesome people. Check them out. They're great people. Even Ruckus is good too. He's from Southie, you know.
What this would be, because I mean, all of us were like, oh my goodness, when this Frank's motion and the whole theory was.
You got Revere on one side, and then you have Southie on the other side, and it's just, you know, two completely different ethnic groups right there.
Laid out. Any indication from the new defense team whether they're going to adopt this, ignore it? Is there going to be communication between the old team and the new team?
There hasn't been any solid indication on that. About all that these new defense attorneys said in court today was they indicated that they had not yet received any discovery materials. And as we know, there are thousands upon thousands of pages of discovery for them to go through. And the judge indicated, well, maybe you will end up adopting these motions made by the defense, or maybe you will file your own.
And do we have any indication, again, because, you know, Andrew Baldwin seemed pretty upset coming out of court today, leaning on the media to do some journalism. Number one, what do you take from that statement? And number two,
I got to remember that Christmas is coming up, so I need to send Steve a spider of some sort. Maybe like a jumping spider or something.
two, are they taking any other action that we know of to try to intervene and get back into the case or somehow impact what's happening?
Kristen and I will probably send Mrs. Steve and Mr. Steve a nice jumping spider.
Happening in this case.
I don't know what was in Baldwin's head when he encouraged the journalists assembled to do journalism. I imagine, dig into the case, and I'm sure he'd, appreciate it if the kind of conclusions of said journalism were in favor of him and his side of this whole thing. But I would say that I don't think we've seen the last of Rosie and Baldwin. I would very much expect for them to kind of continue circling this case in some, effect. Currently, there is a sort of a case with the Indiana Supreme Court that were filed by three completely different attorneys on behalf of Richard Allen. And that's looking at Judge Gull.
All right, look, I get it. That's why I call her King Gull. But they're not going to remove a judge. That's just not happening. You have to do something really, and even then, they're not removing the judge. That's not happening.
And whether or not she's keeping records properly in this case. So there may be opportunities for the old defense team, which seems very highly connected with that filing, to continue to hammer away at Judge Gull. We imagine if they get the opportunity, they will kind of basically tie up.
So I get home from work probably about, 4:30, 5 o'clock, because I'm a night guy and always been a night guy, and that's the way it's going to be. So I usually get in the bed around, I don't know, 6:30 if I want to have a good day, you know. So what was it? Yesterday morning, I think it was yesterday morning, just about to fall asleep, you know, about 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock, and I get this amazing screech from the bathroom, you know, like ear piercing that would wake up the dead. And it's my wife. She's taking a shower, and there's a spider, you know, in the shower. And you know, you would think that there would be a spider bigger than like a, you know, I don't know, dime or something that she's screaming that loud about. And it's this tiny, tiny, tiny little spider. I mean, it's so small. It's
I have
just
this case in appeals. I have this case in the
to scream that loud for something that small is just.
Supreme Court of Indiana and essentially stretch it out so that they can eventually potentially come back and maybe oust her. So there may be twists ahead.
Oh, I think there very well may be. And to follow all the twists and turns in this case, this investigation, make sure you download the Murder Sheet podcast. They're on top of it each and every moment that something happens. Anya and Kevin, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Happy Halloween.
You too. Okay, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight in Columbia, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney and lawyer Lori on TikTok, Lori Murray. Also with us in West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant and incredible trial attorney Rick King. And in Washington, D.C., you know him, the attorney who represented Johnny Depp successfully in his defamation case, and a fellow.
Yeah, I will agree. Down in Georgia, you probably have spiders you got to be worried about, right? Up here, if there's a spider around outside right now, I'd be shocked. They don't last long here. Once the cold weather sets in, they're goners.
Of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ben Chu is back with us as well. Okay, so my head's gonna explode. I've never seen anything like this before. All right, Lori, which is
Vinny is just classic. He can't get over this stuff. This is
more of a, every time there's a criminal case, we're always worried about the record and the appeals and everything, which is more of a problem, okay? A murder defendant being represented by someone who the judge has deemed to be not competent or has engaged in conduct that is detrimental to the defense, or a murder defendant wanting two lawyers who want to represent him for free and not being allowed to have those lawyers represent him. Because they both seem kind of problematic. Which is a bigger problem, Lori?
I think the bigger problem is that
I love spiders. Spiders, I'm like spiders and turtles. Like if I see a turtle, I'll get out of the car and move it across the road. Same with spiders. If I see a spider and somebody's going to kill it, I'll just put it outside. You know, it's just spiders are awesome. They get rid of all the other bugs.
that if these two lawyers have done something that is unethical and then the judge doesn't want them on the case, says that they're incompetent, you're setting yourself up for a PCR down the road. She cannot go back and say, no, now you're competent and now you're able to represent them. That is an appeal waiting to happen. So that to me is the worst thing. They have to be gone.
So they have to be gone. Rick, do you agree? This guy, his whole life is on the line. He's got two lawyers who believe him so much. And you know, and I know defense attorneys do a lot of great pro bono work.
I mean, you take a look at this guy, right? They got him in Shock Fest here, probably chained up. This guy ain't going anywhere, right? And then you take a look at Brian Kohlberger going to court, right? Guy's dressed in a suit. He might have something underneath the suit so he doesn't go anywhere, but his hands are free. He can do whatever he wants. There's a big difference between these two guys.
But I mean, it's a big give when you say, I'll do this case pro bono. This is a big lift. This is a heavy lift. But they believe in this case so much that they say they'll do it pro bono. That's not going to be a big issue on appeal, that if he loses and is convicted and his attorneys go in a whole different direction and don't go down the odinous path that's been laid out by Rosie and Baldwin. What are your thoughts?
So immediately, I agree with lawyer Lori. That you cannot keep these lawyers in the case once she says they're grossly incompetent, because what happens is, should he lose, I mean, that's immediately going to come back. The judge said these guys were incompetent. You allowed them to stay in the case.
Let me throw another thing in the mix, though. What if it's also the prosecutors who don't want him on the case? And the prosecutors, isn't that kind of dangerous?
So this is what keeps me alive. This is what they call an iced coffee, right? I have, this is my second one already. So I know coffee. Coffee is the only way you can do this. There is no other way.
When prosecutors get to pick the attorneys for the defendant, or get to have a motion to have them kicked off?
Yes, that's very dangerous. And it really struck me as crazy that she would ask the prosecutors, well,
hello, Luis, how are you?
What do you think about these defense lawyers? And then they start opining about how these guys are grossly inept or whatever language they use. That is wrong. And it's just it's leading to an appellate process problem.
Ben Chu, what do you think of this? Well, let me give you something else that happened here. Here's a motion filed by the attorney representing one of the attorneys who's kicked off the case.
People in this house know not to talk to me before I've had coffee or do anything. If I go on an endeavor before I've had my first cup of coffee, it's not going to go well. There's going to be a disaster of some sort.
Case, Andrew Baldwin. Witnesses would also have testified that continuity of counsel is always a crucial consideration. There would also be testimony that an unnecessary continuance forced by a judge would not be in the best interest of the accused. There would also be testimony that a person that has never practiced criminal defense is not competent to judge the effectiveness and necessities and quality of criminal.
So there would also be testimony that an unnecessary continuance forced by a judge would not be in the best interest of the accused. That's weird.
Defense representation, nor what representation is in the best interest of the accused. So now you've got Andrew Baldwin's attorney saying,
Frankie is awesome. She's really good. She has a really good channel. She's all the way up there in Canada, but she's great. I wish I could catch more of her lives, but she usually goes live during the day, and usually I'm sleeping. So, but she's great. We did the guy up in Maine here together. She's awesome. Thank you, Karen.
Judge, you never practiced criminal law. How on earth could you judge what is or is not a good criminal defense attorney? What do you think of that, Ben?
I don't think that argument's going to be very convincing with Judge Gull. And I agree with Rick and Lori. I think that any prejudice to the defendant here has been allayed by the fact that the court has continued the trial, and new counsel who are presumably competent will have more than enough time to prepare. And I think in the run-up, it said that new counsel had the ability to make new motions and wasn't stuck.
I'm also not convinced that they crossed that creek, but
with the motions filed by the counsel deemed incompetent. So I think this is the right way to go, though I certainly agree it's unusual and it's a mess.
Lori, can I throw one more thing in the mix, which is the thing that really got the judge angry and upset?
Yeah, the judge got, in my opinion, the judge, Bob Motta's right. The judge got pissed when, this is just my opinion, she got pissed off when that 136-page document came out. She thought that was extraordinary and overboard, which it was, I think. It was a good call by the defense to do that, but she wasn't having that. She doesn't want this to turn into the O.J. Simpson trial. So she that's why she was pissed. And then the leaking of the crime scene photos, of course, is just, I mean, I don't think that's cool. That's not good. You know, I don't care who it happened, how it happened. It's just not good. I mean, but I think that's the reason why the judge was so pissed. But just tell people that, you know, just come out and, you know, be honest about this stuff. It's a problem in this case. There's no transparency. There's no nothing. So people formulate their own opinion.
And we had an emergency hearing, and where all this happened was the leaking of the crime scene photos. And as we heard from the Murder Sheet podcast, those leaked photos have not been published. Like, they haven't been published anywhere. They were leaked, but they weren't published. So does that go into the equation of their gross negligence in all of this, that the information that was stolen from Andrew Baldwin's office by a friend, unbeknownst to him, and leaked? How would you feel, Lori, if you're representing someone and someone went into your office and took some things that were under seal and leaked them, and you got kicked off the case because of that?
Well, you know, first of all, I did see them. They have been published. They just haven't been published mainstream, but I saw them. So they're out there. But I'd be mad as hell. These people that are breaking into your office, first of all, you're supposed to have your office locked. Nobody should have access to your files. You are supposed to keep those things under lock and key. I have a lock on my office. I have a lock on my office door so that nobody can get into those things. But
that's why they make locks, right? That's the reason why they do that. I mean, I don't know if I believe a lot of the shit that went down with these leaks happening, but who the hell am I? I don't know.
In this case, somebody did. They have been published, and are they prejudicial? Maybe. Do they show a lack of force?
Good night, Lone Pony. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Oh, they do. Okay, so there you go. There you go. True Crime Web has come through again. So my theory is out the door about them going back over the bridge. But I definitely don't think, I don't know if I think there was, I'm pretty sure there wasn't anybody else there, but that's just me. Okay, so we're going to get out of here. Stop sharing that. I want to go to this here because this is really awful news here. I heard this last night, and hold on a second. All right, so I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. So this guy here basically was going like a wildfire here in New York with getting rid of some of the corruption and all of this stuff, and now he's resigning. So
the helm, the respected Suffolk County Police Commissioner is resigning.
And the CBS 2's Jennifer McLogan reports Rodney Harrison made history in Suffolk in more ways than one.
Suffolk's top cop caught many off guard. Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison is resigning.
I was just blessed to be given this opportunity to be the commissioner for the last 2 years. I will say this, that I am looking forward to my new life, which is to be around my family.
I was a surprise for sure.
Suffolk political strategist Michael DeWidziak sharing the opinion of many voters we spoke with.
He has, I think, served with distinction. I think he was the right person for the right job at the right time.
There's been some new developments in the Gilgo investigation.
Harrison's name will forever be linked to what many believe is the biggest case in Suffolk County history.
So this guy's resigning. Rodney Harrison's resigning. If people aren't aware of this case, this is the Gilgo 4 case here, and he basically just completely solved this case. I mean, it's got to go through trial, and people are innocent until proven guilty, but I'm pretty sure this guy's guilty. And now he's resigning. So I don't know what's going on here with that, but him resigning is not good news.
and arrest in the long unsolved Gilgo Beach killings.
When I
Look at how big that guy is. I mean, this guy is a huge man. Look at him.
Gilgo Beach killings.
When I nominated him, talked about the top priority being the Gilgo Beach serial murder case. And with his investigative experience in the NYPD, he was the perfect choice, and he got it done.
After a nationwide search, the 54-year-old Harrison, 3 decades with the NYPD, was selected, becoming the first Black police commissioner in Suffolk County.
So I think what happened here, and I can't be 100%, but I have heard through some of the grapevine that people above him were really upset that he did that interview with Johnny Ray. And that's probably why there's a new there's an election coming up, so that could be another reason why he's resigning. But if there's corruption, it's probably in New York. I mean, it's just, I mean, this is bad news because he was just starting to get somewhere with this case, and who knows what's going to happen after he goes. But it's just bad news.
History. He said he was humbled but deserving.
I don't want to be known as the person that came out here and solved Gilgo, because it was a great team effort that got us to a point of identifying a subject.
Why leave now? Some claim it was ill-advised for Harrison to appear at a private attorney's Gilgo press conference last month. He received veiled criticism from the Republican DA, but most observers say it's because the Democrat County Executive Steve Bellone is term limited. The election to replace him is next week.
I'm going to allow whoever is elected the new county executive to bring whoever he chooses to select to run this department going in the future.
The Gilgo probe and expected trial will continue without him, Harrison.
What was that? My question statement is from the first days. It has been said person or persons of interest without knowing time of death or have an actual timeline. Yeah, we don't know anything. Very little. Some people do, but we don't. I don't. I know that it's possible it's 3:30 or so, 3:30-ish in the Delphi case. Look at this house, right? This is something you'd see in like one of those Ajax commercials, right? When you have all these beautiful homes around, then you have this.
Credited with creating a multi-agency task force that led to the huge break in the case and implemented the department-wide body camera and police reform plan. He can write his ticket into the future.
Tremendous the scope of opportunities he'll have now.
From Suffolk County Police Headquarters, Jennifer McLogan, CBS 2 News.
And Harrison tendered his resignation and plans to leave his post in mid-December.
Okay, so that's that. I just wanted to go over that because that's just terrible about that. Because who knows what's going to happen now with that case. So what was I going to do now? Let's go to, I want to go to there's more information coming out about the Ryan Kohlberger thing. He did get a little bit of good news this week in his defense, but the biggest key this week with this whole thing is that they back out to the House. And we'll play that first. Actually, we'll play this first. Yeah. So, people don't know about the Idaho 4 case. These guys, this guy's accused of unaliving the 4 college students out there in Idaho. And again, this guy's, in my opinion, this guy's pretty guilty, but what do I know? So they're still trying to throw out this grand jury indictment. I don't think that's going to work. But the judge did do a little bit for the defense here this week by putting a timeline on the DNA stuff, I think. So. Steve's so funny. This is something worth repeating right here. Oh, I wanted to, another thing, I wanted to give a shout out to Bobby Knight. I've always been a huge Indiana Hoosier fan. Bobby Knight was a great coach. He's going to be missed. I actually thought he was already dead, but he wasn't. So he died a couple days ago. It just sucks. He was a great coach for Indiana. I don't think they've won anything since he left. So, all right. So let's go here to this. Here, I'll share this. Bobby Knight was great. My favorite with him was when he talked about game face. It was just all right, let's replay this here.
It should be beyond a reasonable doubt. What I'm telling you, Ford, is that it appears that up until 1980, that was true.
Defense. I mean, honestly, before Delphi, that's the only thing I knew about Indiana is the basketball team, Larry Bird, and that's pretty much it.
Attorneys for Brian Kohberger make a compelling argument to throw out his grand jury indictment.
And Notre Dame, of course. But other than that,
As the accused murderer wants this case to just go away. We've got the top 3 things you need to know about the defense's claims and what went down in court, including the ultimate major decisions from the judge. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So is the case against Brian Kohberger going to continue? That was the question this week that had to be answered in court, and we're going to talk about it right now. So Brian Kohberger, of course, is the former PhD student accused of stabbing to death 4 University of Idaho students last November in an off-campus home. Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, Zana Kernodle. He's currently facing 4 first-degree murder.
This guy here, in my opinion, is an attention getter. Look at him. It's just, look at this cop looking at him. Like, go ahead, make my day, right?
Murder charges as well as a burglary charge. We know a lot of the evidence against Kohberger, the cell phone data, the surveillance footage, his car, a match to DNA found at the crime scene, a potential eyewitness ID from a survivor in that house. But we also know that prosecutors presented their case in secret to a grand jury, and a grand jury returned an indictment against Brian Kohberger. Well, that brings me to these latest set of hearings, because leading up to this, the defense has argued.
Is that basketball? So it's the best time of the year for sports, for sure. You have football going on. Texas won. That's amazing. I don't think anybody cares about baseball. But college basketball, college football, absolutely. Yeah, this is a good time of the year for sports. Look at him. God, I hate this guy. I really do. I can't stand him. He's just
argued that grand jury indictment should be thrown out.
Innocent until proven guilty. I got to say that, but I hate this guy.
Basically asking for this case to be dismissed. So first, there was
this case ain't going to be dismissed. It's not happening.
One hearing that was held between the attorneys and Judge John Judge. That's his name, Judge John Judge. And this first hearing was held in private. There were no cameras. The decision hasn't been released. It concerned alleged bias by the grand jury. The reason it was closed is because by nature, grand jury proceedings, and of course, who the grand jurors are, is secret.
Yeah, we got a big game tomorrow. I think we're playing LSU. We'll probably lose. It's going to suck.
But after that,
I'm a huge Alabama fan. Huge.
Did have a public hearing. And first, the judge dropped a major decision that we weren't expecting.
I'm sure you're probably interested in this. I haven't put a decision out yet, but what I'm going to do is take control of the cameras in the courtroom. I'm not going to ban cameras in the courtroom, but I need to have more control over what the cameras are doing and what media or people who are not media are doing with the filming. I know I can.
There isn't anything else about Alabama to like, so that's why I like the Crimson Tide. I mean, other than Talladega, I like Talladega, but Um, I've been a fan of Alabama since I was 1970s.
Only control so much, and that's why I continue to urge people to be patient and have some dignity and some restraint.
Mrs. Steve agrees with me on what?
Now, that is very big because there has been much debate about whether there would be cameras in the Bryan Kohberger trial. And based on Judge's statements, it seems that we're going to have them, or maybe I should say, as of right now, the Kohberger case and its proceedings will have cameras. Hopefully we'll have it by the time trial comes. But it is not clear what he means when he says he's going to take control. Maybe that means they're going to use the court's own camera and not a media pool feed. We'll have to see. But one of the issues that has surfaced was the idea that the camera was spending too much time on Bryan Kohberger. And that's problematic. You know, it could taint a jury pool if they're turning on and all they see is this image of Bryan Kohberger, close-up shots of him. It's unfair public coverage. If all the focus is just on the defendant, whatever the case may be, this is a big win for transparency, a big win for seeing this process play out because so much of this case has been in secret. There's been a gag order in place. So this is a huge decision. Me personally, I love it. All in favor of cameras in the courtroom. Great decision. Okay, now let's move on to what the attorneys and the judge really were there to discuss. That
I'm actually not a big fan of cameras in the courtroom. I don't know why. It always seems to be where if this camera's in a courtroom, it becomes a circus. But that's just me.
That day. And that was the defense's motion to dismiss the indictment on the grounds that the grand jury instructions, what they were told, was wrong. I have to tell you, this is a very, very interesting argument from Kohberger's defense. And honestly, I don't believe I've ever heard of it before. So it goes like this. It's a little complicated, but stay with me. So the grand jury indictment of Kohberger should be...
Look at this guy. He's in the court, right? Like, compare this guy here to Rich and Allen, right? Like, two different states, I guess, man.
Thrown out because the grand jurors were given the improper instructions as to the standard of proof. You see, while they were instructed to return an indictment if they find probable cause exists, meaning there's reasonable grounds to support that Bryan Kohberger committed these crimes, which, by the way, is the typical standard across the country in grand juries. And it's a relatively low standard, low burden. They always say that you can indict a ham sandwich because the standard is so low. The defense is arguing that that is not the standard under Idaho law. The defense is saying that if you look at the Idaho statute, grand juries should only return an indictment if they find proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, not only is that standard higher than probable cause, it is actually the highest standard we have in criminal law, the highest legal bar. The reason the defense says this is because under the Idaho code, the Idaho statute, it says, quote, the grand jury ought to find an indictment when all the evidence before them taken together.
I stopped watching NASCAR. We're big huge. I'm still a big NASCAR fan. I stopped watching NASCAR once Junior left, Dale Jr. Because I mean, this is my opinion. The sport is just not entertaining anymore. But I was Dale Sr.'s biggest fan. Like I remember when he won Daytona, the Daytona 500. Actually, he won Daytona a lot, just not the 500. But I was there. I was, come on, buddy, you can do it. I know you can do it. And it was just such a horrible day when he crashed. It was just awful. It was probably one of the worst days of my life.
There, if unexplained or uncontradicted, would, in their judgment, warrant a conviction by a trial jury. The defense says, well, if you are saying the evidence would mean a conviction at trial.
Hello, Ivy. How are you? Yeah, I just think overall, that's probably more causation than correlation. But I don't know. With today's social media, it's going to be televised. It's going to be out there anyways. There's nothing you can do. That's why I don't like gag orders anymore, because they don't really do what they're supposed to do. I mean, gag orders are supposed to try to be there to not taint the juries, and the juries are tainted anyway. There's nothing you can do about it. With social media and everything, they ought to just release everything. I'm not a big fan of gag orders at all.
And that is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard at a criminal trial. They're saying it's equal. So since the grand jurors were instructed, as the defense says, on the wrong standard, they say the indictment has to be thrown out. In other words, the defense is saying maybe the grand jury would have come back with an indictment anyway, but you have to hold the prosecutors to their burden. They have to show more evidence. There's a higher standard.
You know, and Snee is right. You know, you don't have to really have people that don't know anything about the case. You just have to get them to follow the evidence, right? So, I mean, it's almost impossible these days to not taint a jury.
So here's the thing. They want the judge to either toss out the grand jury indictment, dismiss the case, or send the case to a preliminary hearing to decide if there's enough evidence to go forward with a trial against Kohberger. You see, if the
I mean, look at the Alex Murdaugh case, right? Like they deliberated for like 5 seconds. They already had their mind made up. It's obvious. I mean, I think they thought he was guilty from the beginning. That's just my opinion, but I mean, what did they deliberate for? Like an hour, maybe? I don't know.
Case goes to a preliminary hearing and not a grand jury.
Go through all of that evidence, all of that. I mean, to get 12 people to just agree in that short of time, I don't know if they listened to too much.
Then it's decided by a judge, not a grand jurors. And it's not secret like a grand jury. The defense can hear the prosecution's evidence. They can even present or challenge some of the state's evidence. By all accounts, now that we know that cameras would be in the courtroom, it would be televised. Now, obviously, prosecutors went with the grand jury against Kohberger because, in a way, it's easier. It's more streamlined.
You were at Daytona? That was such a horrible day. I remember that. I thought he was dead in the Talladega accident. When he got into the accident in Talladega, I thought he was dead then. He was just such a reckless driver, but he was just so good.
Streamlined to get an indictment that way than through a preliminary hearing?
I actually think Junior was a better short track driver than Dale Senior. Like Senior never did Watkins Glen or the short tracks good at all. But Junior was okay. I mean, he wasn't good either, but he was a lot better than Pops.
So now you've heard what the defense's argument is. Clearly, the prosecution's not agreeing with this. Let's hear the arguments in court. Here is Kohberger's attorney, Jay Logsdon. And first, he's explaining that the Idaho Code, the statute, means beyond a reasonable doubt, and how we're just discovering this issue today because it seems Idaho has consistently been using probable cause for grand juries, and that might be the wrong standard.
And the first question that a court has to ask is, does that mean? When you start with the plain language, which we argue, what warrants a finding or a conviction by
I got to be careful. The missus is on.
trial jury is beyond a reasonable doubt. And it meant that back in 1887, when the territory took all of these.
As soon as I knew something was up, as soon as Darrell Waltrip said something, because I remember Darrell Waltrip was he was brought. They were doing the race, and he said something like, "Geez, I hope Dale's okay," right? Like, and then I'm like, why would he say that? But I had a suspicion that he was probably not well. I mean, it's just a horrible day, horrible afternoon.
Statutes, almost entirely from the state of California, and it means it today. And then we also pointed out that the great state of California, when they had these on their books from back in the 50s, had already a case in 1962 where they said that it's clearly something more than probable cause, but they weren't too specific about exactly what it meant. And so I'm now put in a position of trying to explain why that occurred and why, in the year of our Lord 2023, we are suddenly finding out that that's not quite how things are supposed to be. Why did we forget that we passed all these laws? And I don't have a great answer for that, but nobody's really digging into this or raising it until this time. So when the court says, look, the Supreme Court's already got a rule on this, Supreme Court's already ruled on it, it's just not true. They have never ruled that probable cause is the basis because there's an argument about it. And they said, no, you're wrong. It's probable cause. That hasn't occurred. They ruled a lot of things, but that's not one of the ones.
And then he says, well, if the grand jury was instructed as to the wrong standard, not only is their decision not accurate, not only is that indictment valid, but he gives us a behind the curtains look at what the grand jurors may have been thinking. Yeah, he kind of says something here that he shouldn't. And he explains that if the grand jurors were given the higher standard, they may not have returned an indictment.
What it's intended to do is just make it so that if you're in a position to get an indictment against somebody, you're going to put on your A game. Obviously, we've been talking a bit about how we don't think that that's what occurred in this particular case. And we certainly don't think that if the court were to adopt this particular case, that this would even remotely cut the mustard, because we know from the grand jurors that at least 6 of them wanted to hear more until they were essentially cut off and told probable cause is the standard and what do people do it.
You probably should cut that, what the grand jurors did or didn't do.
That is interesting. Grand jurors on the fence wanted to hear more evidence. That's a pretty big bombshell, and the judge stopped him there. Well, then Logs then says, okay, now for all of you out there who are like, okay, wait a second. If now we force grand juries to only return indictments if they have to meet this higher standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, we're never going to get indictments, right? It's going to be chaos. He says that's not the case.
I really appreciate everybody for coming in tonight. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.
There have been convictions. There won't be this kind of issue as people claim.
Programming note 2, I may come back on later and do a little bit more on Kimberly Moreau. Been kind of taking a break from that a little bit because of the main unaliving person there. But I'm going to get back onto that soon too.
And then the prosecution, after the defense had the chance to make this argument, they had their chance to respond and basically said, look, this is the law of the land. Probable cause is the standard. It's constantly and consistently been upheld.
So in Edmondson, the Supreme Court said, and I quote, "The purpose of the grand jury proceeding is to determine whether sufficient probable cause exists to bind the defendant over for trial."
I mean, look at this courtroom, right? I mean, this is how normal courtrooms look. And then you take a picture of that courtroom that the Delphi hearing was being heard at. And this is a dump compared to that place.
The determination of guilt or innocence is saved for a later day. As long as the grand jury has received legally sufficient evidence, which in and of itself supports a finding of probable cause, it is not for an appellate court to set aside the indictment. This court is bound by that holding. The Idaho Supreme Court applied that holding in 2 subsequent cases, Martinez and Jones, both cited in my brief.
So, not of crossing only being in creek. See, I've always, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if any of what I originally thought way back when this case came out. But, you know, just hear me out for a second. Like, okay, so say they get, he abducts them there at that point and then starts walking them back across the bridge. And then one of them falls off the bridge, right? Then they have to go down there and see what's going on with the other one, right? I mean, that's always, I mean, that was very early on. That's what I thought might have happened is one of them might have fallen off the bridge and then they go down. I don't know.
Court of Appeals has applied that holding repeatedly. This court is also bound by its holdings.
Basically saying there's no issue here. Well, now Judge had the opportunity to give his take.
To just say, well, they were given the wrong instruction is not exactly the case. I mean, that is the standard that has been used in Idaho for years, maybe 100 years.
I'm taking a fight about it. And
you may have the opportunity to do that to the Supreme Court.
well,
And that's what you're
And-
building.
and if
That's
that's-
what you're building for.
if
Because
that's-
you know that I am constrained by existing law. I can't just change the law as a trial court. I appreciate the argument. I think it's really creative. I am going to deny that argument. I think the argument is
Okay, so there you go. He saw no evidence of a fall, so there you go with that theory too.
good, but I can't go that far. Not today.
So the judge actually appreciated the argument, but he can only do so much. He's not the Supreme Court, where perhaps.
The other thing I know, I mean, I don't know, but I think about the Delphi cases, and I don't know where I know this from, but I think that law enforcement has something they've had for 6.5 years now, and they've been very, 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 very quiet about it. And that's why they've been so reluctant to spill what they have, because it's definitely something that's going to tie everything together. I mean, I don't know if that's even relevant or not, but I felt that way about this for a while, that they have something that nobody knows about, and that's why they're trying to conceal the discovery till the very last second.
Mr. Logsdon should argue this if he wants a change in the state. So the motion was denied, meaning the indictment stands, and Bryan Kohberger is still headed to trial. That's all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube.
Okay, so let's I wanted to play this last one, and I'm going to get out of here. Going back to this Bryan Kohberger thing, I remember a few months ago, hold on a second, they wanted to take this house down, and I mean, everybody was pretty much,
hey everybody, this is Brian.
Okay with it. Like, let's just take the house down, the prosecution, the defense, and everything. And here they are back out at the house. The FBI, they're back out at the house. So it's a really good thing that they didn't tear it down.
And if you are watching this on YouTube, you can see that I am in a car right now. If you're listening, I am sitting in a rental car. It might look kind of strange. Oddly, it feels kind of normal to me, because this is where we do most of our work when I'm on the road, which is most of the time. We're always in rental cars all over the country. This is
Yeah, and like I've said about the Delphi case, I think they've been looking for that gun the entire case. That was the one thing I think that the forensics was telling these guys, like, if you find this gun, you found your guy. That's just I mean, I personally think I'm at like 80%. Rich and Allen's guilty, but all of my opinion doesn't matter. It's going to come down to 12 people. My opinion means absolutely nothing.
Lauren, my producer, passenger seat. Hopefully you can see her. She it's all bundled up. We are Floridians, by the way, so we get really cold easily. But we're in Idaho right now. I've been spending a lot of time in Idaho, obviously covering the Bryan Kohberger case and all the recent developments. We're outside the house right now.
This guy Brian Entin is everywhere. Everywhere there's a case, he's probably nonstop traveling. This guy here, he was all the way out in Delphi a couple weeks ago. He was up in Maine
where the murders happened. We're going to be doing a live shot for Ashley Banfield's show soon. It's been active the last couple of days. The FBI has been back out at the house, which I'll get to in a second. I kind of want to go in chronological order and explain to you some of the biggest developments of the last 2 weeks or so with the case. We've been in Idaho a couple of times because there's been several hearings. The first big development is there was this ongoing fight to throw out the grand jury indictment. The defense wanted the grand jury indictment thrown out. Basically, a grand jury is a group of citizens, jurors, they get called in like jurors for trial. They review evidence and then decide whether to indict someone. So that's what happened in Idaho. Members of the community were called in. They were part of this grand jury. They reviewed the evidence presented by the prosecution and indicted Bryan Kohberger for the.
So Heather Weir here is my better half. She's upstairs feeling pretty crappy. Just wanted to give her a shout out. Go to sleep.
Murders. The defense wanted that indictment thrown out. The grand jury is a secret process, so their exact reasoning of why they wanted it thrown out, we never really found out, because a lot of those hearings were done behind closed doors because it's a secret process. But we knew some of the reasons, the vague reasons. They felt that there could be bias among the grand jurors. Evidence was presented that should not have been presented. Also, that the grand jurors were given the wrong instructions by the prosecution. So there was a secret hearing about that because of the gag order, because the grand jury process is secret. So we had to wait outside. Then there was a public hearing where they argued a little more. Prosecution went back and forth. And the judge ultimately decided that they were not going to throw out, that he was not going to throw out the grand jury indictment. He said he didn't feel like that was something he could do, that it was a creative legal argument, ultimately is what he said, but that they needed to take it up with the Idaho Supreme Court. Didn't really come as a surprise. I didn't expect him to throw it out. Most of the legal scholars and professors who I'd interviewed who had read over the argument, from what we could see, didn't expect it. But it was still it'd have been, if he had thrown it out, wouldn't have thrown out the charges completely against Bryan Kohberger. It would have just set the process back quite a bit. They would have had to have a preliminary hearing, and it would have sort of just delayed things more. So that's not happening. What was interesting, though, is that same hearing about the grand jury, the judge said that he had decided that he was going to allow cameras to stay in the courtroom. You remember there's been this debate ongoing. The defense, Bryan Kohberger's lawyers, have wanted the cameras thrown out of the courtroom. They feel like they are unfair, that they've been zooming in on Kohberger. And I really got
the poor baby, right?
The feeling that that was maybe going to happen. It didn't seem like the judge really liked the cameras. But anyway, at this other hearing on a different topic, the judge said, look, I've thought about it. The cameras are.
I've talked about this before with that piece of crap over there, Alex Murdaugh, right? We just went through 7 weeks of trial. Was it 7 weeks? It seemed longer than that. And, the guy basically put his foot in his mouth. I don't know why they had him take the stand. But, I guess what I'm getting at here is you just wanted him to go away, right? Just never to be heard of again. The guy is a literal piece of crap, and I can say that now because they found him guilty in a court of law, jury of his peers, whether they even deliberated at all or not. It's just, and then, it like clockwork, some ass face has to, just screw everything up. And now they're going to probably have another trial. And geez, you just want this guy to go away. He's just an ass. I just hate him. I can't stand him. And now we're going to have to do it all over again.
I'm going to get to stay. I'm going to have more control.
When you unalive your own child and your wife, right? Just go away. We don't want to hear from you ever
over
again.
The cameras, but they will get to stay. In terms of him saying, I think more control. Is that the way you kind of, yeah. He's going to issue a written ruling about what all of that means. My gut says that when he says more control, it's no longer going to be like a media person running the camera. Maybe the court will have their own camera that's sort of at the back of the room that can't pan around. That's kind of just a more basic, almost like C-SPAN, like a wide angle with audio. And that maybe that's the way they'll go, which, so
the FBI's out there doing some, I think they're doing some DNA stuff out there, or
I am
doing some models of the house again. Can you imagine if they would have taken this house down? This case would have just folded, probably.
Fine with. I mean, I just, I guess I'm biased in this department as a journalist. I'm all about transparency in courts, and I believe that the cameras should get to stay so the public knows what's going on. So I think that was a victory for transparency and for the public. So it was interesting that that came out again in that hearing, though, just because we weren't expecting that at all. So those were two big things of the last couple of weeks that have happened in court. The other big development is what happened here at the House, which is the reason we're sitting outside the House right now. We raced back here to Idaho,
Right, that's the point I'm getting at, right? Like this year, everybody, the defense was on board with taking down the House. I mean, the college has been trying to get rid of this House ever since it happened. You know, I don't blame them. So, and the families, especially Gonzalez family, like, what are you doing? You guys are idiots. You're taking down the House, tearing down the House. Would you imagine if they would have done that? Like, so I'm just telling you, there's sometimes the experts don't know either.
Word that the FBI and Moscow police were coming back to the House to do more investigating, which kind of came as a shock because the prosecution has said over and over again that they were done with the House, that it was okay to tear the House down. We've been following this. I mean, there's been multiple times where they've told us that the House is going to be torn down. The University of Idaho owns the House now. The person who owned the House and was renting it to the victims gifted it to the University of Idaho, and it seemed like the University of Idaho really wanted to tear it down. I don't know if it was like an image thing. I mean, it's right by the campus. It's difficult for the students who live around here to have to look at it. They wanted to make it maybe into a park and a memorial, but that's something that really upset some of the victims' family members, specifically the Gonsalves family, because they said, how can you tear down the House before there is even a trial? What if there's additional?
I'll tell you how you can tear it down. When the college bought it, literally, I think they bought the House so they could tear it down. That's how you can tear the place down. You know, if there's no stopping that. I mean, pretty much when you get into those communities, the colleges own those communities. So it's like when the college says tear the house down, that's how it happens. A house gets torn down. They don't want that eyesore there. So,
evidence needed. What if the jury wants to go take a tour and view the House, which happens? That's happened before. That just happened in the Alec Murdaugh case. Remember,
or what if they need to go back and get more evidence?
They took the shuttles out to Moselle. So it angered the families that they were.
That's a great point right there by Necessarily Evil, just like the CBS building. Exactly.
We're just trying to tear the House down right away. And it was very interesting when, after telling the families and telling everyone, we're done with the House, we're done with the House, we're done with the House, all of a sudden they weren't done with the House. It's kind of like an I told you so moment. Sorry, I'm just looking because there was some words behind me. It's like an I told you so moment sort of for the families, because basically we felt like kind of out of nowhere, FBI comes back to the
Hello, Big Fish. How are you?
House. They take all the boards off of the House, open it up again. You know, all the windows were boarded up, and they basically.
I mean, especially that house, because that house is not like any other house you'll ever see. I mean, there's additions to that house. I mean, floor plans and stuff for one thing, but pretty sure they'll get everything they need now. But I'm just saying it would have been devastating if they would have taken that down.
We're doing this sort of 3D imaging of the entire house, something that they weren't able to do before. I want to read you the University of Idaho put out a statement, again, because they now own the House, about this whole development with the FBI showing up. It says, because the trial of Bryan Kohberger is delayed indefinitely, investigators and the prosecution recently asked University of Idaho for access.
I mean, I live here in New Hampshire, so, you know, especially Upper Valley, New Hampshire, you have Dartmouth, which basically owns the upper part of the state. I mean, what they say goes. There's no such thing as like, and they pump so much money and so much revenue into the states.
Access to the King Road house, where a quadruple homicide took place nearly a year ago. With the new extended timeline, the FBI is on scene today, Tuesday, October 31st and Wednesday, November 1st, to get documentation, to construct visual and audio exhibits, and a physical model of the home. So when they say with the new extended timeline, basically you remember there was this trial date set for Bryan Kohberger in October.
I grew up basically between the two states. I grew up in Revere, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire at the same time, if you can believe it. So.
He waived his right to a speedy trial. Pretty much everyone expected that to happen. Like every lawyer that I
with the Italians
interviewed that has been studying the case said there was no way it was going to go to trial, and it didn't. He waived his right to a speedy trial. It's now delayed, like for a long time. We don't have a date, but all indications are the trial's not happening for a very long time. Months, year, 2 years, we don't know. So when the university said with the new extended timeline, basically they're saying because the trial didn't happen, the prosecution came back and said, oh, since we have time, let's do this different 3D imaging of the house. Again, the families are like, we told you so. Why would you tear the house down when there's possibly more things that you might need to do there, which seems like that was the case because it's been very active out here the last couple of days. Basically, they came out, took all the boards off the house again, opened it up. Team of FBI agents. They had all these specialized cameras all around the house, on the roof. They went on the roads around the house. They went in all the rooms inside the house, it looked like. They had a drone up over the house. It took 2 days. I mean, this wasn't a quick, simple process. They came back out here for 2 days. So I think the families are feeling like, wow, like, thank goodness we.
Whoops.
America is discovering News Nation. Let's get after it. Now.
Hey, everybody, this is Brian.
I lost my position here, so I just fast forwarded it.
Was the situation with the house and really how relieved they are that it hasn't been torn down and that the police were able to come back out and do what they needed to do. Take a listen.
I knew in my heart what was best for those girls and Ethan. I knew what was best was to keep that around until they did more. And
one of my many cats just basically jumped on my computer here and just sorry.
There'll be a point when I'll be like, you know what? Let it go. Let it go.
And our agenda of keeping it around isn't because, it's going to be so sad when it's torn down. I mean, that is going to be sad to me. And people think, how can that tear it down?
You got to have a ton of respect for these people right here. And it's just.
And it's just like, look, my daughter lived a happy life there. Yes, she was murdered there, ultimately murdered. But that was this much time. We have pictures of them in the house. When that house goes, it's going to be hard. I don't want to go in it. I've never even been to the house. I've never drove by it. I don't want to, but it's still going to be when they're like, that house is gone. It is going to be very emotional for me. But that wasn't why the emotional side of things. It was strictly like, is this good for?
Look at this guy right here. That's one of the most bizarre floor plans I've ever seen in my life. But, that's what you do. College towns like that. It's the rent and stuff.
For the prosecution, is this good for the case?
If he pled guilty and said, I'll plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I don't want that because I do know I studied the criminal system and the difference between life in prison, even if it's 20, 30 years, he's 23 hours locked up. He doesn't get to do BTK
killer?
BTK.
Or whatever.
We've found out that he writes papers for other prisoners, gets treated really well because he's intelligent and he's able to help other prisoners get preferential treatment through the legal system. We don't want that type of behavior to happen in our case where he has influence outside of this event.
No, we want, if he's guilty, we just want kind of like a baseball bat right to the face a couple times.
So
that's been a hard one, though. I mean,
he could write a book, he could do things. Idaho doesn't have a law particular that protects against that.
The hard thing with that question, honestly, is that's where you forget, and I don't know how it's possible, but you forget that there's 3 other families involved here. we're not the only ones. You know, it's not just, I'm like, this is not a one, you know,
One crime
you know,
fits all.
This is,
Right.
this isn't just our daughter.
Right. Some
And I
might
know
not want to
that
go through the trial.
I know some of the other families definitely would be, yes, like, let's go. Where do I sign? And I understand that 100%. 100% I understand that. But you know what? Ultimately, it's not our call. I mean, they might ask us our opinion like they did on the death penalty, and we'll give it. But just because, you know, our opinion is yay or nay doesn't mean that, you know, that's what we get.
So again, I really feel for the Gonzalez family, everything that they're going through.
You know, that's why I got into this whole true crime thing. I know it sounds like you know, it's just, you got to feel for the victims. You got to feel for the families. These people, I mean, so one thing, you got to deal with the loss, and then you got to have to go through courts and all of this shit. It's just absolutely horrible. And, you know, I don't think either case is going to, you know, be a joy for any of them. Especially in Delphi, because I don't know. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 95% convinced that even if they find this guy guilty, it's an appeal case. It's just going to be an appeal. No doubt about it in my mind at this point. So this is just going to be the longest pretrial case ever. And that's if they find him guilty. So.
I feel for all the families. I mean, Ethan Chapin's mom, Stacy, we interviewed her last.
I mean, the appeals process it's got to be brutal. It's got to be, you know, and I have to go through the whole thing all over again. You know, that could take years.
Month. It's heartbreaking to talk to them. And
Ninja,
you know, we all get so wrapped up in the case, and I'm following every little court filing and every little development. And sometimes you lose sight of sort of the bigger picture here of what the families are going through, continue to go through. I mean, it's been about a year. November 13th will be the 1 year mark. I hate to use the word anniversary. It just sounds wrong. It sounds too positive, but the 1 year mark since the murders. And I know that that's a difficult time for the families.
And with BTK, I don't trust everything that guy says. I mean, I have always, with BTK, I trust maybe 20-30% of what he says. There's no doubt in my mind that guy's not responsible for more. It just doesn't. How can it's like it's a absolute truth, right? I just can't do that. But he's definitely, I mean, but you know, again, you believe maybe 25-30% of what these guys say, and the rest of just he ain't telling anybody anything.
It's a difficult time for the community. I think there's frustration
and the only reason why he is maybe telling the truth partially is because he's just stuck on himself. He's just a horrible human being.
Legal process is taking so long, but we will be here for the anniversary. I hate to say anniversary.
I remember when he was in court, he was talking about how this is BTK anyways, like how the guy that got away, that one of the witnesses got away, was because he was using something else besides his restraints. Like if he was using his restraints, the kid wouldn't have got away. You know, what a piece of crap. You know, it's just, if they were mine, you know, they wouldn't have gotten away.
Again.
Well, listen, buddy, you're not perfect, okay?
1 year mark. They are going to have a candlelight vigil on campus, I confirmed, and just a time where my heart really goes out to the families. But obviously we'll continue to talk to them, continue to cover the case, all the developments, and we'll keep you posted on what happens next.
You can tell a good marriage when your wife lets you drag you around. Steve is awesome. Steve is fantastic. Mrs. Steve is fantastic. I'm gonna get the hell out of here because it's 1:46 a.m. in the morning, and I got to do some shit around here. I got to blow some stuff up. But I want to appreciate everybody. I appreciate everybody for coming in. Miranda Lee, Karen Lee. I just noticed these guys have the same last name. Lynn, Necessarily Evil. Everybody that came in. CJK, my buddy True Crime Web. True Crime's awesome. One of these days we'll have a coffee and arrest some people at a Waffle House. Luis, thanks for coming in. Necessarily Evil. Lynn, who else was in here? Big Fish, Small Pond. You guys are awesome. Kelt's great. Ivy Rose. Frosty, of course, Frosty was in here. Karen Lee is an awesome person. I think she's the only mod in here right now. But thank you, Karen Lee. I'll probably see you later on Manimal. But like I said, I'll probably come in. I'm going to probably come on late, probably 4 or 5 o'clock at this point, and try to go. I want to go back to Jewel Street up there in Maine and see if I can figure out something about the Kimberly Moreau case. Other than that, I'm going to get the hell out of here. Thank you, sweetie, for coming in. I hope you're sleeping. I'll play my, let's see here. What am I doing? Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I appreciate you coming in, True Crime Web. Check him out. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. Steve is awesome. Steve is a great guy. Always has a, non-opinionated thing. If he doesn't believe somebody, he's not going to tell you anything, so Steve is great. Whoops, I want to do that. All right, I'll play my outro and then I'll get out of here. And then everybody have a good, safe weekend. Enjoy the weekend. And I'll see everybody later. Thank you.
Bye.